The AI in F123. Are they any better than the AI in F122? Well, today we're going to find out. I'm going to give you some changes they've made from F122 to F123, and also some remaining limitations, shall we say, with the AI. I should say, as it is a preview copy, the AI aren't final in this build, but we can get a pretty good idea of how they're going to be in the final game. Well, the first thing, the big news, is they no longer turn in on you as much when you send it on them. On F122, you would send it down the inside, completely legitimate, normal move, and the AI would just pretend you're not there. And worse still, once they'd hit you, they'd turn even more and just drag on you. It was an absolute nightmare.
And I think it's causing some drama. What? I couldn't give him room. What is wrong with AI in this game, dude?
But that behavior at the moment seems to be considerably improved on F123. So what I finally do on F123 is when I send it on them, even if it's, to be honest, a bit too late and a bit too aggressive, what they tend to do is try and squeeze me, but still ultimately leave me room. Now, they do still sometimes turn on me. It does still happen. They're not perfect, but, you know, drivers in real life aren't perfect. Sometimes drivers turn on you, sometimes they don't see you, etc., etc. But, you know, it's now a lot less consistent that you get turned in on, which is absolutely awesome. I've even seen certain behaviors where I've sent it way too deep and way too hard and frankly made a mistake where I've gone in too hard, and the AI have actually given me room, and then once I've gone in too deep, they just cut back on me and just taken the place back. So much better than last year where they just turned in on me and I'd drag them wide with me when I've made my own mistake. Let me go off into the gravel, get on with your race. Another thing that AI seems to improve this year is they don't tend to send it on you quite so hard. On last year's game, if the AI were essentially looking like they were trying to be alongside you, even if they weren't, let's say they were 3 meters, 4 meters, 5 meters behind you, they would just break stupidly late and absolutely send it on you, and it would just be ridiculous. It'd be a corner that maybe you couldn't send, or they just get alongside you way too late, and they'd often just pit maneuver you and just take you out. That seems to be a lot reduced on this year's game now. Now, maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe it means now that AI will struggle to overtake you more. I guess we'll have to wait and see on that one. But at the moment, it does seem that they're a little bit less aggressive and they will take you out less often when trying to go for that dive bomb up the inside. The race start. Now on F122, you basically never got a better start than the AI. Even if you had softer tyres than them off the start, it was almost impossible. And the primary reason for that is because traction was really difficult on F122. It was really hard to get right in that sweet spot of the perfect traction, even just for 1 second, let alone the multiple seconds that's required for a race start until you're no longer wheel spin limited. But on F123, you can now get a better start than the AI. I started on hard tyres with the AI around me on medium tyres, and I still managed to launch off the grid better than them. Now, what I will say is I hope they're not now too nerfed, but I think the biggest difference, to be honest, is the traction difference. You can now, you're much more likely to get a good start now, whereas last year it was super critical, so you always, were more cautious rather than getting loads of wheel spin. This year, there's a lot more leeway there, which I think is the key difference, but I do also feel like the AI has been nerfed slightly, but I hope it's not too far. I don't want to always be able to get a better start than the AI and always gain 5 positions off the start. That's rubbish. I hope sometimes, they do get better starts, and sometimes they don't. I hope it's just a bit more varied, and hopefully we can actually compete with a really good start. I want to be gaining positions off the grid. Something else that AI seems to have changed for F123 is some strategy variety. Now, on last year's game, there was very little by way of strategy variety. All of the AI would normally start on medium tyres. Occasionally, you get some of them starting on softs, but they'd almost all just go for the same strategy, which is just really frustrating and just makes the races a little bit dull. You want to mix up a strategy. It's a big part of F1. Now, the practice races that I have done do seem to show a bit more variety. I've seen AI starting on hard tyres, which was a bit less common on F122. And I've seen them stop at perhaps different times. A wet race I did at Imola, or a dry to wet race, I should say, saw both Ferraris, interestingly, coming in for another set of inters.
So one of the Ferraris in the pits, Charles Leclerc in the pits. What's he going for? I think he's already stopped. He's gone for inters again. Is the Ferrari strategy being simulated properly in this game? The other Ferrari coming in. Carlos Sainz coming in now. Get another set of inters, is it? Are we going to see some more strategy variety in F123? I mean, I'm absolutely here for it, if so.
That was not a weather change, by the way. It was inters for Inter. They just decided, tyre wear-wise, we need to change the tyres. Hopefully, we get a bit more variety, not only of starting tyre, but also of in-race strategy. That was definitely needed for F122's AI. And the indications are, at the moment, that's the case for F123. Fingers crossed that is the case when we get to the release build. If you aren't subscribed to the channel already, make sure you're hitting that sub button down below. We're on the road to 100,000 subscribers. I know people don't like to subscribe on YouTube anymore. I get it. The algorithm's really good. I completely understand. But I would love to get that silver plaque in the background there for 100,000 subscribers. So if you're not subbed already, you enjoy this content, please hit the sub button below. let's get back to the video. On to some limitations of the F123 AI then. Well, to be honest though, the limitations that I've got here were all limitations of the F122 AI. At the moment, I've not discovered any new limitations, any new negatives that have been introduced with AI, which is good. So first of all, then, let's talk about the speed and consistency of the AI on F123. Well, the speed seems largely the same from what I've seen so far. Looking at the AI level that I'm running on 23 versus what I was running on 22, it seems to be pretty much the same. I don't think they've really changed the speed. I don't think they're excessively faster, but they're pretty damn fast on last year's game anyway. It wasn't very often that we were running 110 AI, so that's not a bad thing. Consistency-wise, well, the mistakes are exactly the same. They still do occasionally spin, with quite a scripted spin. They just floor the throttle on some of the exits. And they do also occasionally lock up and go a little bit deep and lose some time. Those are still in, but there's no new mistakes, unfortunately. Even in the wet, they make the exact same, or they're just likely to make a mistake in the wet as they are in the dry. There's no new mistakes, nothing changed in terms of that. In terms of consistency track to track though, and speed track to track, I feel like on this year's game, we'll have to wait and see when we get the full game, that there's going to be a bit more variety. I mean, last year's game, on some tracks I was running about 110 AI. On other tracks I was running about 102 AI. It was massively, massively different track to track. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be any better on this year's game. The AI seems to drive quite similar, but ultimately the handling mod on this year's game is a lot more forgiving, which means you can run a lot more curb. Generally speaking, the car bottoms out a lot less. So I think now on the tracks where you can take a lot of curb, you'll be able to gain a lot on the AI because they don't take a lot of curb. And the tracks where you can't take a lot of curb, or it's not advantageous to take a lot of curb, the AI will be relatively faster. I think, unfortunately, track to track, the AI might be even more consistent than last year. Another limitation of the AI on F123 is they are still a little bit slow when battling. Now, this actually seems to be a little bit better than last year, but I think that's mainly because they back out a bit more. I mentioned at the start that they don't turn on the player now and they don't collide with the player, but actually it just means that they back out a lot more readily. Generally speaking, they're sort of repelled from other cars a lot more this year, which means that when you stand on them, sure, they leave you space, but ultimately means they back out too easily, and that seems to loosely apply to when they're battling with each other. They just don't seem to be really fighting each other quite as hard as they were on last year's game, which in theory means they're a bit quicker when they're battling because they're side by side for less long, but it's ultimately because one of them backs out, being a little bit too generous. Another limitation of the F123 AI is they still don't fully simulate tire temperatures. I've had it before where they've literally been on slick tires on a wet track, kicking up spray and still fairly quick. Now the reason behind that was because their tire temperatures were not going down. Now that is the same on F123, but actually the difference is the player. The tire temperatures are now much more stable for the player. In fact, I've even had it where I pit on a full wet track to slick, hard tyres, and the carcass of the tyre has actually warmed up. The reason for that is the brake temperature now affects the tyre a lot more than the surface temperature, so you can actually warm up slick tyres. So although the AI haven't changed in this way, so it's still a limitation of the AI, actually the tyre temperature difference between the AI and the player is much more reduced, purely because the player has a lot more stable temperatures and they won't drop in wet conditions, so that's not an issue. The outlaps seem pretty similar to last year. For the most part, they nerf their speed a little bit to simulate tyre warm-up, even though the tyres don't actually warm up. I feel like, although the AI don't simulate tyre temps this year, I feel like it's a bit of a non-issue this year, if I'm honest. Well, there we go then. That's a rundown of the AI on the preview build of F123. So overall, I'd say probably better, purely because they all crash less with the player, which was such a huge, it was almost like a bug last year. It was such a huge issue that it's good that that's been improved. But actually, it just ultimately comes, at the cost of battling. In reaction to everybody complaining that the AI kept crashing into the player, they've made them give the player room, but now it's made them too cautious, and now they're going to be super easy to overtake and super easy to defend from. I don't know. It's a hard one to get right, don't get me wrong. To try and make an AI drive like a player, it is very difficult. So yeah, overall, I'd say an improvement on 22, but that's more because 22 was an issue. Behavior-wise, I don't know. Other than that tweak, I don't feel like they've really changed much year on year, to be honest. There's a few minor tweaks here and there, but for the most part, they've just made them avoid the player. That's all they've really done. Well, there we go, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. We've got lots more analysis content coming to this channel. If you want to just see gameplay, though, just me playing F123, head over to the Alex Gillen Gameplay YouTube channel. Catch you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.